This panel looks at drone proliferation across the globe, something that is so critical for us to get a handle on in order to build a global movement. And the moderator of this panel is somebody that I admire tremendously. His name is Chris Cole. He lives in the UK. He's one of those rare people that is both a fabulous writer. His report that he did called Convenient Killing, Armed Drones and the PlayStation Mentality is a very, very important report to read, and he is constantly writing new articles and analysis. He also runs a very important website that you should look into called Drone Wars UK. And he runs a network called UK Drones Campaign Network. I have had the great honor of visiting Chris in the UK when he has brought together members of this network. And it is groups that are human rights organizations, faith-based groups, and they are people who not only walk the walk, but they talk the talk. And they have, as Chris has done, organized numerous protests and acts of civil disobedience. Chris himself has been to prison many times for the cause of peace. So he is a writer, an activist, and it's a great honor to welcome him from the UK, Chris Cole.
Well, thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and bring greetings from activists and drone campaigners in the UK and across Europe. Like others, I want to extend my thanks to Medea and Code Pink and the others. I think we all know of the great public work that Code Pink does raising these issues. But behind the scenes, there is an enormous amount of work that goes on too. Many of us do not see that, but we thank you and acknowledge you for doing that great work. This panel is about the proliferation of armed drones, and it's an extremely important issue for us at this time. We've heard there has been lots of focus on how drones breach international human rights law, and that is quite correct and quite appropriate. And we thank Mary Ellen and Marjorie and Pardis for laying that out for us this morning. But drones are also a grave threat to global peace and international security. And this is what this panel is about this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the UK and why drone proliferation is such an important issue for us. But before I do that, I want to welcome and introduce my fellow panel members. First of all, speaking after me will be Elsa Rassbach, I think, who's a founding member of the German drone campaign, is a key member of War Resisters International, and is also an active member of Code Pink in Europe. And Elsa will be speaking about the challenges and drone proliferation, particularly from a German and EU perspective. On your extreme left is Dalit Baum, who I'm very pleased to meet as well. We have never met before. I'm looking forward to speaking to you afterwards. She is director of the Middle East program of the American Friends Services Committee and is co-founder of Who Profits from the Occupation, which many of us will know is a fantastic initiative, and many of us have used the great research from that. And Dalit will be speaking about the Israeli issue of drones, so thank you very much. Wade McMullen, who was due to be here, unfortunately could not be here, from the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights. He was going to look at Latin America, but unfortunately he couldn't be with us. But that, of course, gives us more time for the audience to participate. And of course, we have Noel Sharkey with us. Many of you will know he's an old friend, and he's probably, in fact, the person in the room who's been working on this issue and speaking about this issue the longest. He's Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at the University of Sheffield in the UK, and is founder of the International Committee for Robotic Arms Control, and is currently very involved in the campaign to stop killer robots, as it's called. And Noel will be speaking about the push towards fully autonomous weapons, which as well is a very important issue for us in relation to the growing use of drones. So At the moment, 3 nations have so far used armed drones: the US, Israel, and the UK. And about 12 nations, we don't know the exact number, of nations have seen drone strikes on their territory: Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Iraq, Somalia, Libya, Mali, the Philippines, Gaza, Egypt, Sudan. About 12 countries. We don't know all of these for definite because, as we know, one of the big issues with drones is the secrecy surrounding them. But 3 nations have launched drone strikes. 12 nations have been subjected to drone strikes, roughly. But that is unfortunately going to be the tip of the iceberg unless we raise our voices and challenge the proliferation of drones. The UK first began using unarmed predator drones about 10 years ago when British RAF crews began piloting US drones over Iraq and Afghanistan in January 2004, so it's almost exactly a decade ago. And kind of like a mark being given their first free taste by a pusher, Britain has been hooked on the drone wars ever since. The UK has now 5 armed drones in Afghanistan, and we're in the process at the moment of doubling the fleet, despite the supposed imminent withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I guess that word imminent is flexible in those circumstances as well. The UK is also developing a new drone called the Watchkeeper alongside Elbit Systems, another Israeli company. As a nation, we've spent already more than $3.5 billion on buying and developing drones. But despite cuts to social services in the UK that you two have seen here, and austerity budgets, we're about to invest another $3.5 billion in developing another brand new drone under the Scavenger programme. Britain, it seems, is hand in glove with the US and Israel in developing the drone wars. Now, those of us who have been opposing war and military intervention for many years can sense a feeling of war weariness amongst the public. The public is growing more and more war weary, and that's a good thing. We've seen that in our country, specifically around the vote to intervene in Syria, which took many of our politicians by surprise. But will that war weariness end US and European wanting to impose their will on other nations, wanting to ensure that their interests come first? Not likely. Unfortunately, empire has learned many times how to cope with war-weary citizens. And that's in part why we're seeing the rise of the drone wars. It's part of the strategy to bypass the need for boots on the ground. It's part of the strategy to bypass the need for public affirmations for such military adventures. And it's part of the strategy to bypass public and media scrutiny of military action overseas. And this isn't just speculation on my part. A British military policy document was revealed just a few weeks ago that showed UK military thinking on how to deal with what it called a casualty-averse public. And they, of course, mean our casualties, not other nations' casualties. And that strategy includes lowering the profile of repatriation ceremonies, so hiding the body bags and the coffins when they come back, greater use of private military companies, and of course, greater investment in unmanned drones. The fact is that drones simply make it easier to carry out military intervention, and drones enable secrecy and much lower public accountability. Besides the direct impact on the people living under the drones, and of course, as we've heard this morning and yesterday outside the White House, and General Atomics. That should always be the center of our attention. But secrecy and lies comes as part and parcel of the package when you buy into the drone wars. Like the US use of armed drones in Pakistan, there's a great deal of secrecy surrounding the British use of armed drones in Afghanistan. Now, it may surprise many people here to know that the UK has launched the same number of drone strikes in Afghanistan as the US has launched in Pakistan, although maybe a few more weapons will have been used by the US. Despite this, despite having only a very small number of armed drones in Afghanistan, compared to the US, it's something like 5 British drones in Afghanistan to somewhere around 180, 200 armed drones in Afghanistan. The UK is carrying out about 40% of drone strikes in Afghanistan. And the reality is that there's more information about the impact of the secretive CIA use of drones in Pakistan than the military's, both the British and the US's use of drones in Afghanistan. As we've heard this morning, we know from reliable reports from organisations like the Bureau for Investigative Journalism that between 2,500 and 3,500 people have been killed in those same number of strikes in Pakistan. Somewhere between 400 and 900 of those are confirmed, reliably accounted for as civilians. I think many more will have been civilians, but the recording organisations are under such pressure to only record those who are civilians that they can absolutely say so. So there are more civilians. But just across the border in Afghanistan, using exactly the same weapon, in exactly the same way, the British say that only 4 civilians have been killed. Now, either the RAF is 100 to 200 times better than the US at drone strikes, or there's something seriously wrong with those figures. And I know what I believe. So along with the proliferation of drones comes the proliferation of secrecy and the proliferation of lies. One lie that we're constantly told in the UK is that British drone strikes are a rare occasion. A very rare occasion, we're told. They hardly ever happen. Yet we know from information prized out through Freedom of Information request that on average there's about 9 weapons launched from a British drone each month. So that's roughly 2 British drone strikes a week in Afghanistan. Twice a week. Is that rare or very rare? Not by my definition. These people, I think, can't help but start lying once they're involved with the drone wars. And another big lie that surrounds the drone war, that's been proliferated right along with the drones themselves, is that the myth of pinpoint accuracy. Any media story, again, as we've heard this morning, about drones or drone strikes is accompanied by the word pinpoint or precise. You know, like last night, 5 suspected terrorists were killed in a pinpoint strike. It's almost as though the media believe the missiles aren't called Hellfire or Brimstone, but are called pinpoint or precise. And if you listen to advocates of drone warfare, they believe it's like some inverse version of the rapture. You know, the evangelical Christian belief that at the end of days, God will come and take all the good people away and leave the bad people behind. And drone warfare is like some inverse version of that, where the bad people are taken away and the innocent left behind. But it's a myth. There's no such thing as a guaranteed, accurate, pinpoint missile strike. And it's not me that's saying this. I went to a military briefing just a few months ago by the Royal United Services Institute in London. It's a British military think tank. It was a session on precision strike, and senior military commanders were saying exactly the same thing. Yes, of course, weapons are much more precise than they were 40 or 50 years ago when it took, 1,000 bomber raid to be guaranteed to hit one target. Of course, weapons are more precise than that. But the Hollywood idea that you can launch a missile and it will kill the exact person is just that, a Hollywood idea. And we know from the thousands of innocent people that have been killed. And particularly when you're launching a weapon from 5 miles high from a drone, aiming at a moving target 10 or 20 miles away, through cloud, through bad weather. And when the pilot in Creech or in Waddington, RF Waddington in Lincolnshire, hits the button, there's between 2.5 and 4 second delay before the weapon actually launches. There is no such thing as a guaranteed pinpoint precision, particularly when you take into account the blast radius of these weapons. And for example, some of the weapons used on drones are 500-pound weapons. And the US military says to be safe from a 500-pound explosion, you need to be more than 500 meters away. So you can see how dangerous the idea of pinpoint precision is with these weapons. But of course, the big lie that's being proliferated along with drones is that they're an effective means of obtaining peace and security. You know, tell that to the thousands of people who've been victims of drone strikes, or to the thousands of people who've lost family members in suicide bombings launched in response to drone strikes. Who was it who said that the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it? Well, even bigger than that lie, even bigger than the lie that drones are an effective means of creating security, is the lie that drones are the ethical option. Now, I don't know about people here, but I often get told that drones are the ethical option because the other option is what? Mass ground troop invasion of Waziristan, or mass use of mass use of Tomahawk cruise missiles. We're told that drones are the only game in town, as Leon Panetta put it. But according to that argument, of course, anything could be ethical. You know, biological weapons could be ethical because they, cause less harm than nuclear weapons. Any option, anything can be ethical if you can think of a worse option. So that lie is worthy, I think, of Joseph Goebbels. Yeah. Drones are eroding the laws of war and human rights built up over the past 60 years, as we've heard this morning. But the proliferation of drones around the globe is also doing serious damage to global peace and security. Drones are seducing politicians away from engaging in political and diplomatic solutions to international problems in favour of taking out the bad guy. You know, these people are becoming gangsters. Drones are luring us away from proper, long-term counter-terrorism work in favour of, whack-a-mole here in the US. Drones are not a solution to global insecurity problems, just the reverse. And our tasks as peacemakers, as justice advocates, is to stop the rise of the drones by stopping their proliferation around the globe. Thank you. Very much. I'd like to welcome Elsa now. Thank you.
So, I'm glad you mentioned Goebbels because I'm coming from a country that knows now for 3 generations what does it mean to violate the rule of law, to destroy the rule of law, to consider your country to have, and your certain people in your country to have an unlimited right to kill. And even if the drone strikes aren't as massive as the Holocaust, and even if Guantanamo is not as large as the concentration camps, qualitatively it's the same. And this is shocking to Germans. This is shocking to people throughout Europe. And my belief and our belief in the drone campaign is that the reason the US in Israel also are pushing their drones, besides wanting to make sales, is not that they're really looking and thinking Germany is going to compete with them militarily, or France either. They want them to join the gang. They want little signs of approval from the heart of civilization that it's okay. France, Germany, England say rule of law. Now, of course, we know in continental Europe that England is not really part of Europe totally. I mean, you don't have the euro. You spy with impunity together with the U.S. on the rest of us. And, you guys basically see us as not really allies, but sort of in the middle between allies and enemies. But of course, there are people in the German elite who would like to be in the same position and taken into the club, and there's others who feel differently. Anyway, so I'm a lot of what I'm going to talk about, it's about proliferation, but it's also about law. And so I have to talk about three things. I hope it's not going to be too long. One is the U.S. violation of German law on German soil by the use of illegal drone strikes, which has been coming out more and more in the press. And also involving German intelligence agencies in murdering German citizens in places like Pakistan. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the drive of certain in the German military and government to acquire weaponized drones, and the struggle against that in the parliament. It's so great that Germany is quite a bit more democratic country than the United States now, because in Germany the parliament absolutely decides whether we get drones or not, and does decide, in fact, every year whether we're going to continue, whoever in Germany, to send troops to Afghanistan. So there's political pressure that the people can bring to bear in a certain way in Germany that is not the case here. And the third thing I want to talk about is the interests of the weapons manufacturers, and I'm sure you read many news reports. There's going to be a European drone. They already have lots of drones and so forth. What Chris said is true. Only 3 countries have so far used armed drones, and only 2 of them outside a declared battle area. That is the USA and Israel. They would like more in the club. It's our job in Europe to stop them. So, anyway, regarding German complicity, now, Germany acts as a headquarters for secret U.S. wars in Africa, and Germany is the European hub for CIA operations and the training ground for the expanding U.S. drone attacks worldwide. Agreements going back to the Cold War period have given the U.S. intelligence services and military a free rein in Germany. But a series of investigative articles that began appearing at the end of last May in Germany have revealed that the U.S. is using Germany as a key base for the drone war for targeted killings. Now for my, let's see, first slide. No, that's not it. Number 1. It should be back. No, before, go forward. That's it, yeah. Okay, that's Germany. That's all you see that a lot of the U.S. occupation is clustered in Germany still. And these are actually from a new website investigating all this in Germany that's done by the Süddeutsche, our major newspaper, and the NDR TV. It's just up this weekend, actually, interactive and so forth. So basically, I just want to let you see that Germany is still where the most U.S. bases are in Europe by far. Okay, so there's some 43,000 American soldiers still in Germany operating on a total of 40 military bases, one of which in Buchel still stores nuclear. And now we can go to the next. That's nice. No, you're going to the no. Oh, one. The next one. Next one. Okay, they're numbered. Are they out of order now? Yeah, they're out of order. They were in order in my stick? I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay, so in the to the right here is where the American soldiers practice with drones, flying them even over Germany and over civilian areas. Grafenwohr, big training area. They also train with drones. And to the left is, because people have been asking where it is, when you actually it's not on this map, but where you see Landstuhl, the big hospital, about 5 miles from there is Ramstein, which is the biggest U.S. base outside of the U.S. And was the key for all of the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth. And that's the central command for, I mean, that is where now they have discovered that a lot of the drone wars are being directed also out of Ramstein. And then right in Stuttgart, we have AFRICOM, which is the U.S. Central Command for all military operations in Africa, and reports directly to the Pentagon, just like CENTCOM does. And after 18 African countries had refused AFRICOM, it was established in Stuttgart in 2008, with the permission of the German government on the condition that the U.S. would keep it quiet. The public should not know. And so previously they'd already been doing some African things out of the EUCOM. So show me, let's see, 3. I hope it's the next one. No? I don't know where these are. My stick on my computer.
I just put them in the mistake.
Oh, it was in the right order. Okay. These are all the bases that have been established recently, drone bases in Africa, and in fact directed out of AFRICOM in Stuttgart. I'm just name a couple of them. Camp Lemonnier serves as a hub of secret operations in East Africa and the Middle East, targeting Somalia and Yemen. And in Arbo Minch Airport in Ethiopia hosts armed MQ-9 Reaper flights over Somalia. But there's many, many more. These are all directed out of AFRICOM in Stuttgart. So anyway, just to know about how many people are involved, about 1,000 experts work in Stuttgart on target identification, while another 650 are working on about 1,500 computers in Ramstein, surveying on huge monitors, reconnaissance drones in Europe's and Africa's airspace, and then to guide the drones to the victims who have been targeted. The actual pilots are in the U.S. It's relayed over Ramstein and then goes to these bases in Africa where the actual drones are launched. So anyway, as I said, there is a lot coming out. Jeremy Scahill's book has come out, and he's, I believe, collaborating with some of the key German journalists. In any case, one of the reporters in the recent one that's come out said the decision when and who will be executed takes place in Stuttgart. Well, when this came out, Chancellor Merkel's government claimed to know nothing about it, but many legal scholars and political people in Germany were outraged, and also the opposition in the parliament, and they said that perhaps criminal proceedings needed to be taken against the German government for allowing this, and said that the killing of suspected individuals with the help of armed drones outside of an armed conflict situation is being an accessory in an abuse of international law. And 14 members of the Left Party in Parliament filed a criminal lawsuit against Chancellor Merkel and several other leading government figures. That was dismissed by the Attorney General, which of course is in the executive himself. But the Attorney General has stated that the Attorney General's office is doing an investigation whether there was any criminal implications, any Germans criminally implicated by what's happening there. And it is also clear now that Ramstein is being used for U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan. It's also the case that German authorities systematically provide the U.S. with information from asylum seekers applying to come to Germany, and the info is used in U.S. drone attacks. Like if you come in from Somalia, you want asylum, then they interview you at length. They pass the info on to the U.S. The U.S. could do a drone strike on that. On the 4th of October, we've had one case where a German citizen, where it's come anyway before the legal authorities in Germany, a German citizen of Turkish descent, Bunyamin Erdogan, was killed with 4 other people by a U.S. drone strike in Mir Ali, Pakistan, on the 4th of October 2010, possibly with the assistance of German intelligence. The Attorney General was required to investigate whether a war crime had been committed against this German citizen. And on July 1st, announced, after 3 years of investigation, after a long time trying to determine whether they even had jurisdiction, they said they would not prosecute, claiming they believed that Bunyamin was a member of an armed group involved in an armed conflict and therefore not a person protected under international humanitarian law. However, the way they got this information was they were holding his brother in prison in Frankfurt, and even if I don't even believe the information, supposedly the brother said that his brother was a terrorist. I don't know what kind of pressure the brother in Frankfurt was under, but in any case, there has been a primetime German TV show interviewing the family and all that. Oh, I have to really hurry here. And saying that, his German employer, he was working as a gardener, all say that he was a wonderful person, and it's very hard to believe, and maybe it will be challenged. The second big debate is about whether the German military should acquire or use armed drones. And up until now, Germany has been leasing 3 surveillance Herons from Israel for the war in Afghanistan, and occasionally requested NATO partners, the US or UK, to carry out drone strikes in Afghanistan. But the German defense minister and the CDU, the ruling party, decided they really want some armed drones. And they went around, they negotiated with the U.S. for Reapers and negotiated with Israel, and they didn't really discuss it with the parliament. And when the parliament found out about it, there was outrage. And there was public outrage also. And this was the point at which we launched this all started in the summer of 2012, and we were consulting what to do, but we launched our German drone campaign in March of 2013. And now I have to show you, explain something very briefly, or you won't understand anything about German or European politics, or how we could actually challenge them. Just 1 second here, and that's from the parties. Wait, no, let's see. Okay. You always hear about this in the news, but some of you will know this and some will not. But basically, we have many parties in the parliament, and the parties, when an election occurs, they almost never have a majority, and 2 parties or 3 parties have to join together and make a majority. And so we basically were able to win over, for our drone campaign, the Greens, which are there, the left. And we got the SPD to also, surprisingly, shortly before the election, say that they were against drones and they're for an international ban of fully autonomous weapons. And now the CDU, we were very surprised. It was their party decision. And the situation now is that they are negotiating with the CDU to do a coalition government, and they have to come up with what is the policy of this new government. And even though it's then, I think it's very important what they're saying now. There was a story in the Spiegel that came out on Tuesday, everything's okay. Subsequent reports are saying it's a little more complicated, and I just would like to read you the short excerpt of what this government thing will say, because it's still coalition agreement, very good for us. We categorically reject extra-legal killings using armed unmanned aerial vehicles. That's both parties together, government. I just want to read 3 things, because otherwise we won't see what we have to go on here. Germany will work for the inclusion of armed unmanned aerial vehicles in international disarmament and arms control agreements, and will work towards a binding international ban of autonomous weapons systems where humans are not responsible for the decisions regarding their deployment. Both these statements are new. And before making, this is where they waffled, before making this decision regarding the acquisition of qualitatively new weapon systems, we will carefully examine all related questions arising from international and constitutional law, security policy, and ethical issues. I had wanted to go over with you, but Germany's too complicated. It's more complicated than England. And to go over, and especially all of Europe, to go over the weapons development, but we'll have to talk outside about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elsa. Thank you, Dalit.
Okay, go. You can see them. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today. I'm going to be talking about Israel. And I'm actually going to be cheating a little bit because I won't be doing a lot of talking about drones. I should be talking about drones because it was just published that Israel is the largest exporter of drones in the world. It's responsible for 41% of all drone exports in the last decade. And in fact, it's also a huge financial business. It's $4.6 billion in exports in the last 7 years or so, which I'm sure also influences political decisions and decisions about how to use them on the ground. I'm going to say a few words about why is that the case? Why is Israel such a fabulous success in exporting and using those drones? I'm not going to give the entire reasoning. I think I'm going to focus on one or two reasons. And one reason being, of course, the Israeli occupation and the great impunities that Israel enjoys in continuing the Israeli occupation and how it is used as a laboratory for new weaponry, especially such weaponry. But more specifically, I'm going to focus on Gaza. So first of all, I don't know if you can see the map. That's a map of the West Bank and Gaza and the way they have been administered. And one more click. This is Gaza. Now, Gaza is really a very small piece of land. It's about 25 miles from south to north, and across it's between 3 and 4 miles in the narrow areas, up to 7 miles in the wider areas. That's all. It's a very small piece of land. There are 1.6 million people living there. Over 1 million people are refugees from what is now called Israel, refugees that have lived in that area since 1948. And what's really striking about the Israeli control of Gaza ever since 2005, the Israeli disengagement from Gaza, is that it is really a control from the outside, but a total control from the outside. You can say that this is a fantasy of control. Not so, I would even say the OCD fantasy of control, where everybody and anything in Gaza is considered a source of contamination. People are treated as ticking bombs, and how the control from the outside includes the total control of the registry of the population, for example. So no person would be born in Gaza and would expect to get any kind of services or even a Palestinian ID without being registered with the Israeli authorities. So they have lists of everybody's names. It is so controlled that when Israel attacked Gaza in Kastled in 2008, they sent text messages to people whose houses were about to be bombed. So they had the numbers for people according to geographical location. If you ever crossed any terminals in and out of Gaza, I haven't, but I've seen them, you see how the fantasy of controls goes an extra step. These terminals are machines for processing people, and they are machines that have special technologies of one technology I call talking to the wall. The walls are talking to you and you can respond. You don't see people. No contamination because of potential risk of getting too close to people. There are balloons in the air above Gaza that listen to people's conversations. All of the, of course, internet and phones are controlled. There is a total control of food coming in and out. So, in fact, it was also released to the press that there is a special army unit in the Israeli army that has all these dietary discussions of what a Gazan should or shouldn't eat. The control goes to the very minute details of people's lives, and it also is predicated on an idea of expendability of these people. It's not just that they are expendable because they are totally vulnerable and exposed to the Israeli state power. They are not citizens of any state. They have no advocates outside, but also because they are refugees from within Israel. And so Israel has a vested interest in keeping them locked up and keeping them there and not having any kind of, negotiated solution to that historical problem of them being refugees and being where they are. There are aerial drones in Gaza. Of course, it's one of those areas that is totally all the time under the buzz of the drones. And in fact, we have reports of people suffering. There are reports from the Gaza Mental Health Hospital saying that people suffer from reduced immune system syndromes. They are more susceptible to illnesses and to mental disease, but also physical disease because of living under that stress. But I'm actually going to talk to you about 3 separate stories. None of them is about aerial drones that I think will make it clearer as to what happens with the switch to remote-controlled weapons and then also to autonomous weapons. One story is about these killer D9 bulldozers, the Caterpillar bulldozers, that have been used extensively by Israel in low-intensity urban warfare. The idea is you go with this gigantic, it's like almost 50-ton vehicle, heavily armored, into the very narrow streets of a refugee camp. In my story, it's the Jenin refugee camp in 2002. And just going through all the different bombs that were, I don't know, put there to protect the camp, being shot at, nothing happens, destroying houses upon their inhabitants, taking care of the insurgency in the refugee camp by just clearing it out. And at the time, the Palestinians claimed that there was a huge massacre in the Jenin refugee camp as it was cleared out in that method. And the Israelis announced that this is all lie. But then there was a very, very well-published report in the Israel's leading newspaper, Yediot Aharonot, May 2002, interviewing one of the operators of these monsters. And I'll just read some of the things he said. When they told me to destroy a house, I used it to take down a few more. They were just in the way. 3 days and 3 nights, I only erased and erased. There were many people in the houses we were destroying. They would come out. I never saw people dying under the scoop of the D9 or leaving people buried under the rubble. But if there were any, I do not give a shit. I'm sure people died in those houses, but it was hard to see. If anything, I feel bad that we did not destroy the whole camp. Now, this guy was for 75 hours straight inside the bulldozers. He couldn't come out because it was dangerous and things were exploding around him. He was very safe inside the bulldozers, just taking down house after house after house. When he was asked how he did it, he said that he had a bottle of whiskey with him in the booth of the D9, and he just was drunk the entire time, and he wasn't wearing anything. He just needed a towel, he said, not wearing anything. So can you imagine this naked guy with a towel, very, very drunk on whiskey, taking down houses for 75 hours straight. So this is from, I apologize for this is from a soldier's blog. So you see the kind of artistic creation that was created in response to that massacre. But one of the things that happened after 2002 is Israel decided to use unmanned bulldozers, and this is what they use now. In the latest incursion into the 2 latest incursions into Gaza, they used a tremendous number of these D9s just going in as a line of unmanned bulldozers, remote controlled. They're not autonomous, they're remote controlled, destroying the houses. Now, this is not done in the interest of saving lives of soldiers. There was never a D9 operator killed in action in Israel. They are very, very safe inside these bulldozers. It's not about that. It's about public perceptions. It's about the idea of not having such interviews in the newspaper. The next story I want to tell you is about women in the Israeli military. The Israeli military takes great pride in having women in military combat, not combat, but military duty, not combat duty, never in the battlefield. And in fact, there is a draft for women in Israel. And one of the jobs traditionally associated with women is being observers, spotters. And there are these, how do you call them, sentry towers all along the fence, along the Gaza border. And they have this sophisticated sentry equipment, and there are women very far from there who watch specific areas next to the fence with Gaza, up to a kilometer from the fence. These are all women, it's only women, and starting with the disengagement, these sentry boxes were also equipped with guns, and the women were allowed to use guns and to shoot and kill. They were granted the license to kill for the first time. I'll show you some more. These are only women that operate these systems. They are called spot and shoot. ro'ai, and in Hebrew, which is a very gendered language, it is in the feminine, so it's very obvious that it's women. So women can detect anything unusual happening in that area. This is an area where people live, where people work. There are people's fields there. It's a very fertile area. If they see anything out of the ordinary, they can decide to criminalize that action, and then they should get some kind of an okay, and they can use their right hand, I think, for the gun. The left hand is for the camera. I want to show you a short video, but I want to apologize first, because it's a snuff video. If you don't want to look, I'm just going to show a minute, but you can actually see people being killed here. So, you know, avert your eyes if you want to kind of protect your imagination. This is at night time, so this is a night vision system, heat-seeking system, and this was after midnight, 2009. 3 people were killed, 1 injured. According to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, these were Bedouin, young men, unarmed, probably trying to cross the fence looking for work. Medical crews were not allowed into the area until the next day in the afternoon. You can stop that, yeah. I apologize. But I think it's important to kind of see what we're talking about. Can you go back to the PowerPoint? Where were we?
I apologize. We see.
Yeah.
You're doing the right thing by exposing.
One of the big discussions in Israel around this system was not about the automated use of weapons or using the human touch or something like that, but the idea of who is a warrior. Because women were not allowed on the battlefield before, and the claim was that this time the killing is being done by what they called females and geeks. So it's a kind of a threat to a class of masculinity, I think, that or a romantic notion that what grants you the right to kill is being endangered yourself or being exposed to danger. Okay, let's go on. I'll just show you 2 more systems that are used around Gaza. Maybe go up a little bit to the map again. 1 more. Go up, 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 up.
I think that computer mixes up the sticks.
Yeah. If you look at the Gaza map, you see around the land border, you see that pink area. This is the area covered by these sentry towers. The area in the middle, of course, is all covered by drones, no problem, and balloons that also do surveillance. And then there is also the sea border. Only 3 nautical miles are allowed, up to 6 since the failed attack on Gaza last year, where Gaza fishermen are allowed to go out and fish. And as you can see, this is a huge part of the Gaza area. I have the numbers somewhere. Something like 35% of all the agricultural land is covered by these no-access zones, and 85% of all the viable fishing fields are covered by that no-access zone. And around that, in the corner, there is also an area in the light blue in the sea, and also, I don't know if you see the darker red around, which is a death zone. If you get there, you're dying. That's it. You did. So I'll show you some of the machines used. This is the Guardium, and it's an autonomous vehicle, and it was developed by Elbit and the Israel Aerospace Industries. This is one of their brochures. You cannot read it, but you see the areas highlighted in red. These are all saying no, without harm to human lives, to reduce harm to human lives. It's all about reducing harm to human lives, even though these cars are doing something that soldiers have not done before, so they are not there to replace soldiers or kind of save the lives of soldiers. They are allowing the army to do things that they haven't done before. They are sent around and sold, of course, as surveillance and patrol machines, but of course they are armed with guns. And they patrol not only the Gaza borders, but now also the northern borders of Israel and areas in the West Bank. This is another brochure that shows how they kind of tackle warriors on the border or something like that. These machines have, in some of the promotional videos, they kind of speak to you, say, stop, go no further, blah, blah, blah. And I think what's indicative about these machines is that they do not have microphones. You cannot talk back to them. They only talk at you. And to patrol the Gaza sea border, there are these cute little animals that are called the death sharks, but sold as the protector, unmanned sea vehicle or something like that. And they are used to attack fishermen off the shore of Gaza. One more. Again, they can shout at you, they don't listen. Again, they come with the same idea, and I think this will be the last thing I want to share with you. The idea is very similar to the idea of those sentry boxes. We have a surveillance system. The surveillance system is there to detect risks. There is a huge confusion that comes with using these technologies. The confusion is not just between warrior and non-warrior, or between civilians and enemies, or between a war zone and a non-war zone. All these distinctions that are being erased by the use of these technologies. But there is also a big confusion between what is risk. They detect a risk, which is some kind of a shift from the normal thing that happens in that area that they've been looking at for months and months and months. There is no room for any error with the risk. We cannot allow any case in which somebody comes out and he's a terrorist. So because there is no room for any error, the systems are calibrated in such a way that there is a huge room for false positives. Because you have to calibrate it somehow. And that's what they do. There are all these false positives. It's better to say that these are terrorists and not people looking for work, because what if they are and somebody gets, So that's why all risks are confused, and all risks are confused with risks that have to be eliminated immediately and have to be eliminated by force. So once you have these surveillance systems in place that are looking for the worst possible scenario, 9/11, I don't know what, then these systems also start a circuit. In the Israeli military language, it's called closing a circuit. Closing a circuit means I have to call in the forces that will come and shoot this person. So the women sitting with their visual equipment, they call in the troops, or they call in a helicopter to come bomb. This is closing the circuit. The circuit is only closed when the risk is eliminated. So then comes the engineers and they say, well, we can close the circuit much faster and much more efficiently by letting the person with the binoculars have the gun. That's closing the circuit. And in fact, now in the Israeli military, the language of spot and shoot, the same words used for the name of this system are used across the military. For many different types of systems in the battlefield that are like that. You detect a threat, you destroy it. Spot and shoot, there's nothing in between. So this is a very, very easy shift from surveillance to armed drones or armed killing. And I think we should think about it when we think about surveillance in the cities, of cameras everywhere. And what if somebody comes and says, what if there is a rampant killer outside killing people, shooting people? Why won't we have just a big machine gun on top of the Empire State Building or something? So I think that's the cautionary tale I'm telling here. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dalit. So thank you very much, Dalit. I appreciate that. And I'm very delighted to welcome Noel Sharkey to speak to us about the push towards much more autonomy. Dalit was talking a little bit there about some of the systems in Israel that are being used that are autonomous systems. And Noel's going to speak to us much more about the push towards autonomous systems. Can't rely on technology.
No. This is all deliberate, by the way, just to show you how difficult technology is. Okay. Speak. Well, is there a microphone working here? Okay. Okay, good. Let me just start my timer. I don't trust other people timing me. Well, I'd really like to say that I'm very pleased to be here again this year, but I won't, because I'm not. I'm disappointed that I'm here again this year, and I'm wondering how many more years we're going to have a drone summit before we stop this nonsense, really. How long are we going to do? I'm going to be talking today about advances in technology, and last year I talked about the CIA and some of the ethical and legal issues and the proliferation of drones. But the only thing I have to say about the CIA this year is, will you stop killing civilians and saying that it's collateral damage? Will you stop murdering children and saying, oh, it was necessary because it was a high-value target? Do that and we'll all love you like hell we will. Now, what I'm going to talk about is the next steps in the technology and what we're trying to do about it. This is Jodie Williams, by the way, who got the Nobel Peace Prize for landmines, banning landmines. And I just want to, I'll be getting to her in a few minutes to say about how she's involved in our campaign. The other two are Terminators. So my question is, who in their right mind would automate the decision to kill? I'm going to be talking about autonomous robots, autonomous weapons systems, and I'm not talking about banning autonomous robots. I mean, my vacuum cleaner is an autonomous robot, and I don't want to ban that. What we're trying to get banned is the kill function. In other words, the plans at the moment are to develop machines that will select their own targets and kill them without human intervention. Now, we've got the drones at the minute, and that's really bad. Imagine how bad it is when we don't even have anyone supervising them. It's going to get really bad, and I'll show you some of the developments.
Meet the X-47B, the technological dream machine that is the future of U.S. Navy unmanned aviation. The X-47B has been designed for use aboard Nimitz-class
So you get my opinion of these weapons now, I think. I'm just going to show you the proper video of this, though, so that you can see what it is. Now, this thing, well, you'll see what it does, and it's a toy for the boys.
Meet the X-47B, the technological dream machine that is the future of U.S. Navy unmanned aviation. The X-47B has been designed for use aboard Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. Its tailless batwing shape will make it the stealthiest unmanned system ever to take to the skies.
This is working completely without a pilot. The idea is that it has 10 times the range of the F-35s on board US, the fighter jets on US aircraft carriers, because China's getting better weapons, so we need to get further back from the Pacific and use weapons that don't have any pilots driving them, any pilots deciding on the targets. Now, one of the big issues, these are fast subsonic aircraft, not like the drones, which are quite slow. One of the big issues is the pace of war is getting so fast that we need faster and faster weapons, and the humans are the slow part of the loop. But the question really is, if it's getting so fast, slow down a bit. What's the big hurry to kill more people? I mean, what are we doing?
Stealthy combat aircraft, which can think for itself.
That's the British Mantis, which is also at an advanced stage of testing. Fully autonomous intercontinental aircraft. Now, the thing about here is everybody talks here about things in the sky, but they're not the only robots that are being used in warfare. And I just want to expand that out a little bit for you and let you see what else is going on. Now, this little robot's about this size, normally used for bomb disposal. which is, quite a good thing. You don't want people being killed by bombs. It can look under cars and fire a water cannon at them, but that size. It's made by the same people that make my vacuum cleaner. But look at this. It's got a little box on top of it now, you can see, a little black box. And of course, it's said that that's for mine clearance. Of course it is. Now, there's a you can't really use that in autonomous mode because it's so small, you could just knock it into a pit, really. You can dig a little pit. So DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency of the United States, have developed this thing, fully autonomous. It's called the Crusher. It's a 7-ton truck, and it's called the Crusher because it crushes
The Army
Cadillacs.
teamed up with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, to create the Crusher.
So this is the kind of thing that's going on secretly. This has been going on since 2002, 2003. You can get, if you go onto the internet and read the US military roadmaps, you'll see it all there. Here's the Guardian. We've already seen that, so I won't go on about it. But China are developing these, Russia are developing these, Israel are developing these on the ground. There are sea vessels that are fully autonomous. DARPA is in phase 2 of an autonomous submarine hunting submarine. I mean, it's getting absolutely ridiculous. Everything's going autonomous. We have to draw a moral line somewhere. We were a bit late getting our act together for the drones, but we can't let it go. We just can't let it go to the next step. Now, I'll just say a little bit about international humanitarian law. Not very much. We've got lawyers here. We've got the humanitarians on one side, which is you guys. On the other side, we've got the necessitarians. They're the people who, you can kill people, you do whatever it takes to win a war. Now, the necessitarians don't like me putting this as a tug of war. They say there's more shades than that. Well, look, we don't care what they say, do you? So the problem for robots is that under international humanitarian law, we've got the principle of distinction. For any weapon must undergo a test to show that you can distinguish between a civilian and a child and a soldier, a wounded soldier, a surrendering soldier. These have got to be done. I'm sorry, my timer switched itself into funny mode. So you've got to do these tests on all weapons. You can misuse them, but the problem with these weapons are they are indiscriminate weapons. I've been working in artificial intelligence for 30 years. You could tell a tank that it's a tank in a desert. But if it's in a wood or near a wood and it's a truck and there's a tree branch behind it, you would think it was a tank. We're at a very crude level here. We're pushing forward well beyond the limits. And the idea of proportionality, where you can kill civilians, essentially, paraphrasing, providing it's proportionate to military advantage, robots can't do that kind of judgment. They can't make that kind of decision. It's crazy, really. And they can't be held accountable either. Now, what we're doing here, what we're doing for it, and I'm going to quickly go through that, is that you can't see this very well, but in last year, in October 2012, a small group of NGOs got together. We collected in New York, and it's got the Nobel Women's Initiative there with Jodie Williams. We've got the Human Rights Watch there. We've got the Nobel Pugwash as well, and Article 36 and Harvard Law Clinic and our International Committee for Robot Arms Control. And we began to hatch a plot there to try to get these weapons stopped. Okay. Now, Human Rights Watch delivered a report on this on the 19th of November last year. On the 21st of November, the DoD, the US DoD, released a directive giving the green light to research and development of autonomous weapon systems. But they said they won't use them for the next 5 or 10 years. So that's all right. So what we did next was, in April this year, our plot came to fruition, and we launched the campaign to stop killer robots from the UK Parliament. And we've now got 44 NGOs from 22 countries, and I'm glad to say they include Drone Wars UK, and they include Code Pink. They've joined us as well. So. Now, since then, we've been pushing like crazy. We're not on the streets. I mean, I admire people who are prepared to get arrested and convicted. Hint, hint. But we don't do that. We're working at the diplomatic level. It's very urgent. We don't have bodies to show. We don't have maimed limbs or anything to show. We just have, science to say this will not work. So we're pushing very hard. We've had a lot of meetings. Every time the UN meet now, we have a side event and try to educate delegates. That's our big thing, really. So what's happened is that in May, a month after we gave it, a month after we launched, we had Christoph Haynes go to the Human Rights Council of the UN. You all know Christoph Haynes. He's the anti-drone guy for the extrajudicial killing for the UN. He went to the Human Rights Council with a report asking for a worldwide moratorium on autonomous lethal robots. Now, this was good. We helped him a lot with this. We supported him. 24 nations showed up to the event, and only one nation spoke out against a moratorium. And I'm embarrassed to say it was the United Kingdom, of which I'm a citizen. I'm a Northern Irish citizen of the United Kingdom. Oops. Okay. Not quite my time done, but oh God, shut up. It's autonomous. So anyway, the UK said, we don't want a moratorium. And I was very, very embarrassed with it being my country. The next day, I went out and applied for my Irish citizenship, and I now am an Irish citizen. Now, what can we do about this? Well, we could try to get a treaty, which we are trying to do, just like cluster munitions and landmines. But in the meantime, there's something called the CCW at the UN. And that's where you've got 5 protocols now, and they prohibit things like biological weapons and chemical weapons. And so we've been pushing them. We spoke to the president. The new president is from France. I've been talking to the French military about this for years, and they're on side. We spoke to the French president of the CCW. He was on side, and he proposed that we put this forward for discussion at the UN, but that requires a mandate. There are 117 nations, and any one of those nations could veto it. We spoke to the US delegation, had a good long meeting with them, and they said they wouldn't block it. So that was good. I mean, they're going to manipulate it, but they wouldn't block it. We spoke to a lot of nations about this. We've just been to the UN in Geneva, and we ran a side event again. We spoke at the side event. I explained the weapons to them, and all the nations came to that side event. It was really packed. And yesterday, we got a mandate at the UN CCW for discussions, funded discussions, to start next year. So my big worry, though, and I just have to show this. This is my youngest grandchildren. I just like to show them. They're very cute. These are the people I'm worried about. These are the people who are going to suffer from these weapons. These are the people who are, every 4 or 5 years we change government, and governments can say, we won't use them, we're going to do this and that, and we're going to be very careful. But the next government inherits them, they might not be so careful, and on it goes. By the time they're grown up, if we don't stop these, they're going to be everywhere. There will be robot snipers, or as my friend over here said, machine guns on telegraph poles. They'll be used for, we're already seeing traces of them being used for border control. I'm going to a UN workshop in January about using autonomous weapons to gain access to access-denied areas. I don't even know what that's about yet, but I'll report back next year probably, unless we've stopped them by then, which should be lucky. So we've really got to, I don't want these children moving into a time period where we've got the complete automation of warfare. This is the end, the peak point of the Industrial Revolution. This is a factory of clean killing, sanitized killing, where we don't even have to think about it. We just have machines do it for us. And so really what I want to do here is to stop killer robots.
Well, Thank you very much to Noel, to Elsa and Dalit. I'm extraordinarily delighted to say that we now have some time for questions from the audience. We have about 10-15 minutes before we go to lunch. Medea is telling me 10.
Well,
so if we can have very quick, short contributions from the audience. I'll start with this gentleman over here.
Professor Sharkey, it's great to see a scientist here. I generally don't see scientists and engineers at these sorts of events. And I'm an aerospace engineer by training. And there's this common perception that that science and technological development are inherently neutral and that we leave it to others to decide what to do with them. And the examples of scientists or engineers protesting end up being people that get arrested, for example, so James Hansen and protested climate change or whatever. But I feel like equally at fault is the fact that we are engaging in this work, in this scientific and technological development, and there's a responsibility, us as scientists and engineers, to not do this work. So how would you say, or what would you recommend, how would you change the work that we do? As engineers, like I don't want to leave it to others to decide what to do with my work, but how can I inherently bring something else to the work that I do?
Thank you. We'll just take a couple of questions and then come back. Next question.
Hi, my name is Ariba. I work for an organization called Kuch Karo, Pakistani Students for Change, and I have two questions that I'm going to go over very, very quickly. One is almost specific to Pakistan. There was a report in the Washington Post on October 23rd, 2013, talking about an implicit agreement between Pakistan and USA on drones, and it was very frustrating for people like me, Pakistani citizens who are against drones and who are against what they're doing in Pakistan and who've seen politicians like, the current Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif talk about how anti-drone he is, and to just see that there is an implicit agreement also going on between the government that is on, one face of the government is pro-drones and the other face is anti-drones. And I just want to understand how this fits in with the global spread of drones. If more and more governments have these implicit agreements and they agree that they're not able to control terrorism on their territory and they let the countries like the US intervene and do it on their behalf, how can we prevent that? And the second question is just trying to look at it from the necessicist's point of view. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but just kind of trying to understand what the alternative to drones is. Like Mr. Cole talked about this, and are we talking about, getting rid of killer robots, but having, people go in and just having military interventions by actual, by US citizens? What is the alternative that we're proposing here? Because we can't really get rid of drones until we have something better to propose there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's 3 questions. Should we take those 3 questions? First question about the scientists. Do you want to do that one, Noel?
Yeah, that would be good. Very little. There's nothing much you can do about science. It progresses all the time. You can't stop people developing autonomous robots. It's not doable. But what I say, and they will take, especially in the United States, if you're running a robotics lab in the United States, you take funding from the military. That's who gives out the funding. And they come to you with big piles of money in their hand, and they put words in your mouth. I've spoken to them, and they tried to put words in my mouth. Oh, these can do this and that and the other thing. And the trouble is, scientists who need the money sit there, nod their head, and take the money. So all I say to scientists all the time, whenever I can, is, for God's sake, you can take their money. I can't stop you taking their money. Tell them the truth about the limitations of the technology, because the politicians are being given a sci-fi notion of how this stuff works. That's what you need to do. But the one thing you can do, and why we want a new protocol or a new treaty to totally ban this kill function, is because otherwise scientists will develop it. That's the easy bit, actually, the kill function. You just have to strap a rifle on and put sensors on it, and then you're away. So we have to have a treaty to stop it.
Thank you. I'll just come to Elsa for the second question, if that's all right, about Pakistan.
Yes, and I'm really sorry, but could you just summarize your question again in one thing? I know it's about sovereignty.
She was asking about the implicit agreement between Pakistan, whether...
Right. what I wanted to say about that, I don't know about the implicit agreement, but what I do know is that the violation, with lots of implicit agreements, is taking place all over the world, not only in the targeted countries. I mean, basically what happened in Germany is there's an implicit agreement, but it's not actually legal in Germany. It's not been agreed to by any, by any parliament, by any courts. So this is a worldwide problem. It's not a very good answer for you, except that we have to create a climate of public opinion, and I believe Europe plays a key role, but certainly Pakistan, certainly other countries who need to start speaking up and saying, which they are in a way implicitly in the government program they've negotiated, this is not possible. This cannot be done. Okay.
So, I mean, in the short answer is that we have to go by what the Pakistan government and what the Pakistan people say. No secret implicit agreements.
Right. That's right.
And that's not me who's saying that. That's Ben Emerson, who is the UN Special Rapporteur. The Dalit, she just wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, for the first question, I just wanted to add one sentence, which is there is a huge intimacy, especially in Israel. It's very evident between the industry and the military on the ground. And this intimacy goes both ways. It goes through the development of these tools for the needs of the military, but also in the development of specific military actions for the needs of the industry. That's one sentence. As for your second question, she had a second question. I want to say a sentence about necessity. There are some problems that cannot be solved by force. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Hi.
Questions.
Hi. Unfortunately, there's an intimacy between all of us who are paying taxes to these governments and all of those, the defense and the military and the corporations. And the handful of money that they come at us with is from all of us and maybe from all of you. And so I always say, of course, it's got to be immoral for us to continue to pay 60+ cents out of every dollar for war making. But I now am thinking and listening to these lawyers, it's got to be illegal if these things like torture and these weapons are illegal, and Nuremberg tried people for complicity in illegal actions, then isn't it illegal for us before the court of God or law to continue paying the taxes? So thank you.
My name's Andrew, and I might be the only Canadian here. I don't know. But anyway, here's my question. Oh, no. Okay, good. Thank you. My question. I want to be clear on this about these, about to arrive in our midst, autonomous drones with license to kill. Now, this license to kill, do you think they'll be given, like, actual identities, or will these be more signature strikes? You know, so this type of person you must kill. Is there an answer to that yet at this point?
No, there's an answer.
Back to the panel. One more question.
Sorry.
How do we get our younger people more involved and more aware and to be more active? Because I look around the room and most of the people here are old people. Okay, and so I mean, seriously, you know, the younger people need to be more involved.
Huh? Okay.
Young people.
I'm really sorry. Thank you very much. We're going to have to answer these 3 questions, and that's all the time that we have for this morning. I'm sorry. So can we answer the question, should we stop contributing and paying our taxes? No.
Yeah. No, well, I would just...
You can answer that.
No, I want to answer the other one, actually. But I'm just going to, I think we should, when we have a campaign starting in Germany also, to do that in case they do have the combat drones. But I wanted also to briefly say that we in Germany, I feel it's a wonderful campaign, and at the same time, in most of the world, we're trying to stop from getting combat drones. And I think for a victim, it doesn't matter if it's a fully autonomous system or if it has a pilot. And so we brought our petition here, that the English version, we would like to have as many signatures as possible for our German petition, which says no combat drones. And I'm not going to read the whole petition, no. But I will. But anyway, we are seeking, and we have to say that the waffling forces in our government say they're against autonomous. The strong forces really fighting against the drones are saying ban combat drones in countries that don't have them yet.
No.
Just on one sentence on the taxes, I never say they when I'm talking about this military stuff. I always say we, because I feel responsible as well, because I'm a taxpayer. We're all responsible for this. It's not some sort of distant being who's doing it. They're doing it on our behalf. They're our elected representatives, and we should be able to stop that. In terms of the drones, yes, there are attempts to try and look at signature strikes, but they're really useless. You can't do it. So you just kill everyone. And at the moment, what you will do is you will try every step you can to comply with international humanitarian law. That's what we'll do to begin with. We'll use them in a very limited way. But there's going to be massive proliferation, and then nobody's going to give a shit how they're used. They'll just be killing people left, right, and centre.
So thank you very much. I'm sorry we're out of time. This has just been the beginning of the drone summit this morning. We have more time. In answer to the person about how do we get more young people involved, come tomorrow. Tomorrow is about the campaigning. So I'm being pushed off to the side here.
Don't go. I want to say one before we lose our C-SPAN feed in 1 minute, that we want the people not only here but who are watching this elsewhere, and this will be played many times by C-SPAN, to get involved in these issues. You can go to codepink.org to find out more information, and you can go to droneswatch.org, but we need a much larger movement. So join us, and you are joining in with a global group of people who believes that we can solve a lot of these world problems by peaceful needs. We don't need killer drones or killer robots. Thank you. Now, I want to give a hand to this wonderful panel that's given us a taste of what's happening globally. And we have our Yemenis who have arrived, more of the delegates, and you will be hearing from them in the afternoon. We also have a fabulous film that's going to be shown midway during the lunch period. We have organized your lunches to be very quick and efficient. We requested, cost us each one $5. If you can make a donation of that or more for those who can't afford the $5, great. This has all been a sliding scale, the whole thing, which has been wonderful. Then at 1:15, we're going to start a showing of the film. It is by Mediha Tahrir. Mediha, are you here? Yes, I'm here. Ah, wonderful. Well, let's give her a hand before it even starts. It is called Wounds of Waziristan. It's a 20-minute film, and it's absolutely fabulous. And then we will have a chance to talk. It will be in here. They say no food and drinks, but we like to break the rules. So try breaking the rules and see if you get in trouble. And then we'll have a chance for discussion with Mediha, and then a really fabulous afternoon session. Thank you all very much. One more thing about the lunches. We have ordered exactly a 100 turkey, 100 vegetarian, and 100 tuna. If you are a vegetarian, please leave the vegetarians to the vegetarians, and you go for the tuna or the turkey, and let's see if it all works out perfectly. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing finally? If you're from Europe, if you're here from Europe, please make yourself known to Elsa or myself. Thank you.